Electronics glitch when you're angry. Strangers dump their trauma on you, and animals stare at you intensely. If you don't learn to regulate your electromagnetic field, you will suffer from extreme sensory burnout. I will give you a high-frequency grounding plan to manage your extraordinary energetic output safely. Maybe you have spent years trying to act normal around experiences that never felt normal. A device freezes in your hand right when your emotions peak. You step into a crowded place feeling fine, and 10 minutes later, your whole body feels heavy, foggy, and overwhelmed. A dog locks eyes with you like it recognizes something before you even speak. And after enough of those moments, you start wondering whether you are too sensitive, too intense, or just imagining patterns that are not there. But deep down, that explanation has never fully satisfied you. Because what makes this so exhausting is not just the experience itself. It is having no framework for it, no language, no instruction manual. So what could be a gift starts feeling like a flaw. In this video, we are going to bring structure to that chaos. Not to make you feel special for the sake of it, but to help you feel safer inside your own system. Because when your inner state shifts, your outer reality seems to respond. And whether you call that energy, intuition, frequency, or sensitivity, the first step is the same. Stop treating your experiences like evidence that something is wrong with you. You may not be malfunctioning at all. You may be operating with more signal than you were ever taught how to manage. Let's start with the part that most people either romanticize too quickly or dismiss too fast: why your experience can feel both spiritual and physical at the same time. If you have ever felt like you are sensing more than the room itself, more than the conversation itself, more than what is being said on the surface, then you already know this is not just about mood. It is not just about being emotional. It is not even just about being intuitive in the casual way people use that word. It can feel like you are receiving information through layers. One layer is what is visibly happening. Another layer is what is emotionally happening underneath it. And then there is a third layer that is harder to explain. The energetic tone behind the whole thing. That is what makes life feel so strange when you do not have a map for it. You can be in a completely ordinary moment and still feel like something much bigger is moving underneath the surface. A conversation at work does not just feel like a conversation. It feels dense, charged, loaded with things nobody is naming. A random place can feel peaceful before you understand why. Another place can make your chest tighten even when everything looks fine. Sometimes your body reacts before your mind has any explanation at all. This chapter is not here to force one belief system on you. It is here to give a framework that helps make your experience less chaotic. The metaphysical view would say that some people operate like multidimensional receivers. In other words, you are not only processing the obvious, material layer of reality, you are also picking up emotional currents, relational tension, symbolic meaning, subtle shifts in atmosphere, and what many people would simply call energy. You notice patterns faster. You feel changes earlier. You respond to invisible signals that other people either do not detect or do not trust. That can sound dramatic until you realize how ordinary it actually feels from the inside. From the inside, it usually does not feel mystical first. It feels inconvenient first. It feels like walking into a room and immediately wanting to leave, but not knowing why. It feels like being told you are overreacting when your nervous system already clocked that something was off. It feels like trying to explain to other people that a place to a person or a situation feels scrambled, harsh, or draining, and watching them stare at you like you are speaking another language. And because you cannot always prove what you sense, you start questioning yourself. That self-doubt is often where the real damage begins, because once you stop trusting your own signal, you become easy to overwhelm. You stay in spaces too long. You ignore your body's warning signs. You try to think your way out of what you can already feel. And then your exhaustion builds to the point where everything becomes harder to interpret clearly. So when we say you may operate on a multi-dimensional frequency, what does that really mean in practical human terms? It means your system may be taking in more input than you consciously realize, not just sights and sounds, but tension, contradiction, emotional residue, intention, instability, and unspoken energy. Your mind might still be trying to label the moment while your body has already read it. That is why some people feel too much in a world that keeps rewarding numbness. Their instrument panel is active all the time. Their awareness is not broken. It is simply not filtered the same way. Have you ever blown out a light bulb just by being incredibly stressed? Maybe yes, maybe no. But even if your experiences are subtler than that, the real point is this: there are moments when your inner intensity does not stay neatly contained inside you. It spills outward. It affects your focus, your presence, your reactions, your relationships, and the way you move through physical environments. When you do not understand that, it feels like random chaos. When you do understand it, you can begin to work with it. That shift matters, because the moment you stop asking, "What is wrong with me?" and start asking, "What exactly is my system picking up?" you move from shame into awareness, and awareness changes everything. It helps you notice that what looked like instability may actually be sensitivity without structure. What looked like weakness may be signal overload. What looked like being dramatic may be your body telling the truth before your mind catches up. You are not required to believe every mystical label people attach to this. You do not need to force yourself into a cosmic identity that does not feel genuine. But you do deserve language that helps you stop pathologizing every unusual thing you experience. Because bizarre does not automatically mean broken. Sometimes it means your perception does not fit neatly inside the ordinary frame. And that is why this first chapter matters so much. Before you can protect your energy, before you can understand why crowded spaces flatten you, before you can track why your technology seems to glitch during emotional surges, you need a clean foundation. You need to stop treating your sensitivity like an error code. You need to stop making your unusual experiences carry the weight of self-rejection. Quick recap: you aren't crazy. You just have a high-voltage soul. Whether you hear that spiritually, psychologically, or somewhere in between, let the core message land. The strange moments you have experienced may not be flaws in your design. They may be signs that your system is highly responsive, deeply perceptive, and more affected by unseen input than you realized. And once you accept that possibility, the next question becomes unavoidable. If your system is this open, this responsive, this absorbent, then what happens when you walk into spaces carrying other people's pain? That is where we go next. One of the hardest parts of being highly sensitive to energy is that you can spend half your life carrying emotions that were never yours to begin with. And because you feel them in your body, they feel personal. That is what makes this so confusing. You walk into a crowded store, a family gathering, a waiting room, a classroom, a train station, and within minutes your mood changes. Your chest gets tighter. Your thoughts get heavier. Your energy drops. You suddenly feel irritated, sad, restless, numb, or emotionally flooded, even if you were completely steady before you arrived. Then, you assume something is wrong with you, when sometimes what is really happening is much simpler. Your system is absorbing signal. Some people move through public spaces with a natural energetic boundary. They register what is around them, but it does not enter too deeply. They can notice tension without internalizing it. They can sit near someone distressed without merging with that distress. But when you are wired like a human sponge, the boundary is much thinner. You do not just observe emotion. You start processing it, and that can become exhausting very quickly. You may have noticed this, especially around people who overshare almost immediately. Strangers tell you deeply personal things without understanding why they feel safe doing it. Emotionally chaotic people seem drawn to you. You become the one others unload onto, confess to, lean on, or collapse in front of. Part of that is your presence. Part of it is your sensitivity. And part of it is that unhealed pain often looks for the nearest open container. If you are not careful, that container becomes you. The important thing to understand here is that absorption is not the same thing as compassion. A lot of sensitive people confuse those two. They think that if they stop absorbing, they will become cold. If they stop carrying other people's heaviness, they will become selfish. If they create a boundary, they will lose their ability to love deeply. But that is not what healthy protection does. Healthy protection lets you witness without drowning. It lets you care without becoming the storage unit for everyone else's fear, grief, anger, and confusion. It lets you remain open-hearted without remaining wide open. That difference is everything. Because when you absorb too much for too long, your own signal becomes harder to hear. You stop knowing what is yours and what is not. You mistake foreign emotional residue for intuition. You call yourself unstable when you are actually overloaded. That is why this chapter is so practical. You need a way to shut the valve off. Not forever. Not by becoming numb. Just enough to move through the world without taking in every emotional current around you. This is where the return to sender mental filter becomes useful. Before you enter a crowded or emotionally dense space, take a single breath and set one clear inner instruction. What belongs to me can stay with me, and what belongs to others returns to them with no harm. You do not need to say it dramatically. You do not need to perform it. Just set the filter. Then, as you move through the space, notice what changes in your body. If you suddenly feel a wave of sadness, panic, anger, or heaviness, do not instantly claim it. Pause. Ask a different question: is this mine? Or did I just step into it? That tiny interruption can save you a huge amount of confusion. Because when you stop automatically identifying with every emotion that passes through you, you start creating separation. And separation is what gives you choice. Let's make this more concrete. Imagine you walk into a grocery store feeling normal. 2 aisles in, you feel a crushing sadness and pressure behind your eyes. The old pattern says, "Something is wrong with me." The new pattern says, "I am noticing a wave. Let me not become it." You breathe once. You soften your shoulders. In your mind, you say, "Return to center." You do not push. You do not fight. You simply refuse to fuse with what may not belong to you. That simple shift can keep a passing emotion from becoming a full-body takeover. Many example animals recognize frequencies that humans are blind to. That is part of why your body also registers emotional weather before your mind explains it. In a dense environment, you may be reading subtle cues faster than you consciously know. Tone, posture, tension, stress chemistry, fragmented attention, social pressure, suppressed emotion. All of it creates an atmosphere, and your system is often faster than your logic. That does not mean every feeling is psychic truth. It means your body is highly reactive to the field around it. So the goal is not to trust every sensation blindly. The goal is to notice it without swallowing it whole. A good practice in public spaces is to check your baseline before you enter. Ask yourself, what am I feeling right now? Before I step in. Then check again 10 minutes later. If your emotional state changes sharply and suddenly, there is a good chance you are picking up surrounding energy rather than generating that feeling from within. Over time, this helps you become more precise. You stop living in vague overwhelm and start recognizing patterns. And once you recognize patterns, you can intervene earlier. You can shorten your exposure. You can step outside. You can reset your breathing. You can place one hand over your chest and remind your nervous system. This is not all mine to carry. You can stop turning random emotional impact into personal identity. That is the real freedom here. Because a human sponge without discernment becomes chronically drained. A human sponge with discernment becomes powerfully aware. Simple viewer exercise. Rub your palms together quickly. Pull them apart. And feel the heat, whether you describe that as friction, bioelectricity, energy, or attention. The point is the same. Your system is not empty. It is active. It is responsive. And once you start relating to it consciously, you stop being at the mercy of every room you enter. You do not need to harden into a wall. You just need to learn how to stay yourself in places where many people lose themselves. And that brings us to the next question. If your emotions and other people's emotions can affect your body so strongly, what happens when that intensity spills into the devices around you? That is where we go next. Now we reach the part that makes people either lean in immediately or shut down completely. Because sensing emotional energy is one thing. Feeling overloaded in crowds is one thing. But when lights flicker, phones freeze, batteries die, or devices glitch around moments of intense stress, most people want a cleaner explanation. They want to know whether this is spiritual symbolism, nervous system projection, coincidence, or something that can actually be understood in more grounded terms. The honest answer is that this chapter lives in the overlap, not the fantasy version of science, not the fake certainty version of spirituality. The overlap. Your body is electrical. That part is not mystical. Your brain communicates through electrochemical signals. Your heart runs on electrical activity. Your nervous system is constantly transmitting impulses. Your muscles contract through electrical signaling. Your body is not just a lump of matter having feelings. It is a living bioelectrical system having physical, emotional, and mental experiences all at once. So when your emotional state changes sharply, your physiology changes with it. Your breath changes. Your posture changes. Your muscle tension changes. Your heart rhythm changes. Your level of stress chemistry changes. Your focus narrows. Your movement becomes sharper or more scattered. Even your grip on a phone, the force of your touch, the way you plug something in, the way you pace, the way you charge and discharge your own energy through the environment can shift dramatically. That does not mean every frozen laptop is proof of supernatural powers, but it also means you should stop pretending your emotional intensity has no physical expression. It does. That is the doorway to understanding this without drifting into nonsense. When people are highly activated, they become less regulated in ways that absolutely affect the material world around them. A stressed person is more likely to handle technology abruptly, miss details, forget charging patterns, overheat a device through constant use, interrupt a process at the wrong moment, or notice glitches more intensely because their own system is already in an alarm state. On top of that, emotional stress changes your perception of time, memory, and pattern recognition. So some events that feel eerie are partly about how intensely you are noticing them, but that is not the whole story either, because there are also people who notice a repeated pattern. A surge of anger, grief, panic, or emotional overwhelm happens, and within seconds, a lamp cuts out, a screen crashes, earbuds disconnect, or a battery drops much faster than expected. Once or twice. That could be random, but when it becomes part of your lived pattern, dismissing it entirely does not feel honest either. This is where a more mature perspective helps. Instead of leaping to, I have magical powers, or collapsing into, it's all in my head. Try this. Intense internal states can coincide with external disruption. And the most useful thing I can do is observe the pattern carefully. That is how you move from mythology to data, and data matters. Because without it, you will either become superstitious about everything or ashamed of everything. Neither one helps. Think about it this way. If your system becomes dysregulated, your field of attention changes. Your body becomes more chaotic. Your behavior becomes less precise. Your emotional signal becomes stronger in your own experience. You may also become more sensitized to anomalies. All of that can create a real loop between what is happening inside you and what you notice happening outside you. So rather than arguing over whether you are causing the glitch in some absolute sense, begin by asking a better question. What is the relationship between my emotional spikes and the tech disruptions I keep noticing? That question is humble enough to be honest and practical enough to be useful. This is why the practical takeaway for this chapter is so important. Track your tech glitches to map your emotional spikes. Not in a dramatic way, in a clear way, for 2 weeks, or even 30 days, if you want better pattern recognition. Keep a simple note on your phone or in a journal. Every time a strange device issue happens, write down 5 things. What glitched? What time it happened? What you were feeling in the hour before? What your body felt like in that moment? And what environment you were in. That is it. You are not trying to prove a cosmic theory in a lab. You are building self-awareness. Maybe you will find that most glitches happen when you are sleep-deprived, overstimulated, and emotionally flooded. Maybe you will notice your phone freezes more when you have been doom-scrolling in a dysregulated state for 40 minutes. Maybe you will see that lights seem to flicker more often after conflict, during grief, or in the middle of panic spirals. Maybe you will discover that some of what felt paranormal was actually a nervous system pattern. Or maybe you will notice something stranger and more consistent than you expected. Either way, you win, because now you are no longer helpless inside a vague mystery. You are in relationship with your own data. Question: have you ever blown out a light bulb just by being incredibly stressed? Whether your answer is yes, maybe, or not exactly. The reason that question matters is not because it proves anything on the spot. It matters because it directs your attention toward correlation. It asks you to stop brushing past your lived experience while also refusing to build your whole identity around it. That middle path is powerful. Let's use a simple example. Say you get into an argument. Your chest is tight. Your jaw locks. Your mind starts racing. 10 minutes later, your laptop crashes while you are trying to send an important message. The old pattern might be to dramatize it or to dismiss it. The wiser pattern is to log it. Emotional surge, conflict, body tension, tech failure. Then you look for repetition over time. And here is the deeper reason this helps. Emotional spikes rarely stay isolated. They ripple. They affect your thinking, your nervous system, your habits, your perception, your environment, your relationships, and sometimes the objects you interact with most. When you start tracking that ripple, you gain something more valuable than an explanation. You gain leverage. You begin to see early warning signs. You notice that before a device glitch, there is often a body glitch. Maybe your breathing gets shallow. Maybe your skin feels hot. Maybe your thoughts turn sharp and absolute. Maybe you start moving too fast, clicking too fast, gripping too hard, forgetting basics. The external disruption becomes a mirror for internal overload. And once you can see the mirror, you can intervene sooner. That is the real power of this chapter. Not proving that you are some kind of supernatural electrical storm. Not explaining every malfunction with one grand theory. Just learning to read your own intensity before it short-circuits your clarity. You walk under a streetlight and it flickers off. Your computer freezes the second. Anxiety surges through you. A battery seems to collapse faster on the worst emotional days. Maybe some of that is coincidence. Maybe some of it is your heightened noticing. Maybe some of it is the very real fact that your body, mind, and environment are not as separate as you were taught to believe. But whatever the explanation, the instruction is the same. Pay attention, track it. Respect the pattern without worshiping it, because the moment you stop treating these experiences as random, you start uncovering the conditions that make them more likely. And those conditions are often the same ones that are burning you out internally. Quick recap: you aren't crazy. You just have a high-voltage soul. And a high-voltage system without grounding will keep frying itself on stress. So now that we have looked at the pattern, the next step becomes obvious. You do not just need explanation. You need a method. You need a way to clear static fast. Come back into your body and stop carrying so much charge that everything around you starts feeling scrambled. That is where we go next. Understanding yourself helps. Naming the pattern helps. Tracking the connection between your emotions, your body, and your environment helps. But none of that matters much if you still end every day overloaded, buzzing, exhausted, and unable to come back down. This is where grounding stops being a nice idea and becomes basic maintenance. Because if your system really is this sensitive, this responsive, this quick to absorb and amplify, then you cannot treat regulation like an optional extra. You need a repeatable way to discharge static before it builds into full burnout. You need methods that are simple enough to use on bad days, not just on your best days when you already feel clear. That is the whole purpose of this grounding plan. Not to make you perfect, not to make you immune, just to help your body remember how to return to baseline. A lot of people hear the word grounding and immediately imagine something vague, ceremonial, or complicated. But the most effective grounding is often the least dramatic. It is practical, physical, fast. It gives your body a clear signal that the charge can come down now. Let's start with the 2 rapid reset methods from this chapter: saltwater grounding and earth grounding. Saltwater grounding works because it combines sensation, intention, and interruption. When you are flooded, your system needs something concrete. So, if you are at home, go to a sink, shower, or basin. Run cool or slightly warm water over your hands, wrists, or feet. If possible, add a small amount of salt to the water or dissolve it in a bowl and soak your hands for a minute or 2. As you do this, keep the instruction incredibly simple. Let the static leave. That is it. You do not need a complicated script. You do not need to force a spiritual performance. You are giving your body and mind the same message through 2 channels at once. Physically, you are shifting your sensory state. Mentally, you are telling your system that release is allowed. If your day has been especially intense, turn it into a 5-minute protocol. Water on the hands or feet. Slow breathing. Unclench your jaw. Drop your shoulders. Exhale longer than you inhale. And as thoughts keep trying to pull you back into the noise, return to the same instruction. Let the static leave. Sometimes simple repetition works better than intellectual analysis. Earth grounding is even more direct. If you have access to grass, soil, stone, or any natural ground, step outside and make contact. Bare feet, if that feels available and safe. If not, sit with your hands against the earth, a tree, or even a stone surface. The point is not perfection. The point is contact. Real contact. Not looking at nature through a window while your mind keeps spinning. Actually pausing long enough for your body to register. I am here. I am supported. I do not have to keep transmitting at full volume. For 5 minutes, do less than you think you need to do. No solving. No scrolling. No mentally replaying every conversation. Just contact and breath. This matters because highly charged people often make the same mistake. They try to think themselves into calm. But when your system is flooded, thinking is usually not the exit. Sensation is. Breath is. Temperature is. Contact is. Rhythm is. You need something that brings the body back first. Because the body is where the overload landed. That is also why little daily detox habits matter more than occasional dramatic resets. Open a window in the morning and let your senses meet something real before you meet a screen. Shake out your hands after emotionally heavy interactions. Rinse your face when you leave crowded places. Change clothes after a draining day if your body tends to hold on to the feeling of an environment. Sit in silence for 2 minutes before bed instead of carrying the day straight into sleep. None of these things look impressive from the outside, but regulation is usually built through ordinary acts done consistently. That is how you stop short-circuiting yourself. And protection matters too, but probably not in the way people think. Protecting your aura, your energy, or your field is not about becoming tense and defensive all day. That just creates more strain. Real protection is cleaner than that. It begins with not staying open to everything. It begins with choosing when you are available, what environments you linger in, whose emotional material you keep letting into your body. and how quickly you return to yourself after impact. Protection is less about building a wall and more about closing unnecessary tabs. If you know crowded spaces drain you, prepare before entering. If certain people leave you foggy every single time, shorten the exposure. If your body feels scrambled after conflict, do not pretend you can just push through it unchanged. Reset on purpose. Wash your hands. Gap outside. Put both feet on the floor. Breathe until your exhale slows down. These are not tiny things when practiced at the right moment. They are how you interrupt accumulation, because accumulation is what breaks you down. Not one hard moment, not one strange interaction, not one flickering light. It is the pileup, the unprocessed charge, the emotions you absorbed and never cleared, the stress you noticed and normalized, the static you carried because no one ever taught you that release was part of the job. So here is the rapid 5-minute protocol. All in one flow. First, stop moving for a moment. Do not keep rushing while overloaded. Second, make physical contact with something regulating salt water on the hands or feet, or the earth beneath you. Third, exhale longer than you inhale for 5 slow breaths. Fourth, unclench the body where stress hides most often. Jaw, shoulders, stomach, hands. Fifth, say one clear line internally. I release what is not mine, and I return to myself now. That is your reset. Not glamorous, not complicated, effective, and the more often you use it before total burnout, the more your system learns the route home. Because that is really what grounding is. It is not punishment for being sensitive. It is not proof that something is wrong with you. It is how a high-output system stays safe. It is how you stop confusing intensity with identity. It is how you keep your gift from becoming chronic depletion. You are not here to become less perceptive. You are here to become more stable inside what you perceive. And once that begins, everything changes. Crowded spaces become more manageable. Emotional spillover becomes easier to identify. Tech glitches become information instead of fear. Your body becomes easier to trust. Your sensitivity stops feeling like a curse you have to survive and starts feeling like a system you can actually work with. That is the shift. And now that you have the map, all that remains is the reminder that makes this usable in real life. You do not need to fix everything at once. You just need to start grounding before the static becomes your whole day. So if this video found you at the exact moment you were starting to doubt yourself again, let this be the thing you remember. Your sensitivity is not automatically a malfunction. Your body may be picking up more than you were ever taught how to interpret. Your emotions may be affecting more than you realized. Your exhaustion may not be weakness at all. It may be the result of carrying too much signal without enough grounding. That changes the way you need to treat yourself, not with fear, not with ego, with skill. Notice the rooms that change you. Notice the people who leave residue in your body. Notice the emotional spikes that seem to ripple into everything around you. And then do the simplest thing most people never do: respond early. Ground before burnout. Clear before overload becomes identity. Return to yourself before the world convinces you that your sensitivity is the problem, because it is not. The real problem is having powerful perception without a way to regulate it. And now you have a place to begin. If this gave language to experiences you have never been able to explain, let that be your sign to stop dismissing what your system has been telling you. Start tracking. Start grounding. Start trusting the patterns enough to work with them responsibly. And if this video resonated with you, leave a comment with the word grounded so you can mark this as the moment you stopped calling yourself broken and started learning your frequency. Subscribe if you want more grounded, practical guidance for sensitive souls navigating intense inner and outer worlds.